In an off-season where predictably teams were going to go down the Sean McVay, Doug Peterson, Matt Nagy type of route, trying to find their former quarterback, offensive mind that can be a guru and work with their young quarterback, which will lead to some good hires and some what the hell were you thinking type of hires. It's good to see a team go with somebody that, beyond question, is actually qualified for the opportunity. Now, that said, just because somebody has years and years of experience doesn't automatically mean they will be a good, let alone great, NFL head coach. Somebody could be a great play caller on the offensive side of the ball or a great play caller on the defensive side of the ball. But when they go from an assistant and a minion to being the head cheese, the view as the lead dog is different, and some guys can adjust and handle it, and some guys cannot. So it is ultimately, with any of these head coaching hires, it is a crapshoot. There's a variety of different factors that go into it. But there are certain ones that you look at and you feel like that's destined to blow up in their faces. And there are other ones that are like, okay, even if this doesn't work out, it's hard to knock them because it made a lot of sense. The Denver Broncos hiring Vic Fangio to be their next head coach just is sensible. The guy has earned the opportunity. His experience, years of doing great work with the San Francisco 49ers as their defensive coordinator, and then most recently, obviously, with the Chicago Bears defense in this 2018 season, I mean, there was no question Vic Fangio had earned a chance. He deserved a chance and merited an opportunity to be able to call the shots himself. And that's exactly what John Elway has granted him in Denver. And when you look at Fangio and his fit in Denver, it feels like an outstanding fit. He comes from a team with all types of young talent at all three levels of the defense, to now coming to a team that runs a similar type of scheme to what he's always run and what he was running in Chicago and running in San Francisco. And he's got a couple of premier edge rush guys in Von Miller and Bradley Chubb. You can't tell me if you're a Broncos fan, you're not excited about the possibilities of what could happen with a Vic Fangio coach defense, with Bradley Chubb screaming off of one end and Von Miller screaming off the other end. And when you look at their defensive line, could he potentially get more out of guys like Derek Wolfe and Adam Gotsis? Most certainly look at the work he did with guys like Eddie Goldman and Akeem Hicks, and so on. You can look at all three levels of that Bears defense and see work that he did with guys to get more out of them to make them better. Even in the secondary, you look at Adrian Amos. You look most certainly at Eddie Jackson, who was an All-Pro this year, Kyle Fuller, who was an All-Pro this year. You look at them, and a lot of that goes into the coaching they received from Vic Fangio and his staff. And then my understanding is Gary Kubiak, it looks like, will be the offensive play caller. Interesting dynamic. Former team head coach is now the offensive coordinator. But you've got Vic Fangio as the guy that clearly knows what the hell he's doing on the defensive side of the ball. If you have a guy like Kubiak, you have a guy that certainly knows what he's doing on the offensive side of the ball. This feels like a really good formula for success for the Denver Broncos, especially if they can build up that offense a little bit, and especially if they get it right with a young quarterback in this upcoming draft. And sure, while it goes against the grain of getting the young quarterback whispering offensive guru, I think that's just fine. Because not all of these quarterback whispering offensive gurus are going to work out, and some of them are going to fall flat on their fucking faces. It's that simple. A couple of them might work. Most of them will not. If I'm a Broncos fan, I feel much more confident in getting a guy that is clearly established, and not just he's been a defensive coordinator for several years at multiple stops in the NFL. This is a guy who has coached top-flight, elite NFL defenses and clearly has had impact on getting the most out of many guys on both of his teams, especially in San Francisco and Chicago. You have to look at that and feel confident, in my opinion, if you're a Broncos fan. And sure, ultimately, it doesn't address the fact that John Elway is your general manager. And where I've said some kind things about him in the past, that time has come and gone. His micromanaging style rubs people the wrong way, and if he's not going to allow Fangio to pick his own staff, it could be a recipe for disaster. Absolutely no question about it. But to me, if you're a Broncos fan, this feels like one of the safest hires. While he doesn't have previous head coaching experience, he has a lot of defensive coordinator experience with really, really good defensive units. You may wonder why it took so long to get an opportunity. Fair question. Maybe he rubbed people the wrong way. Maybe he didn't feel like he was truly ready. Maybe he went after certain opportunities where other guys were better equipped and more qualified for the job in the opinions of the decision makers. And maybe it's just one of those things where he kind of slipped through the cracks and always felt like he was the number 2 option, but he wasn't really the top guy that people fell in love with. But if you're the Denver Broncos and you're a Broncos fan at least, I guarantee you at least in 2019, you'll fall in love with that Vic Fangio coach defense. And if they can get something right at the quarterback position, I wouldn't be surprised to see this team in the playoff mix right away.